Good evening. Masaher, Aludura Karim, Wahala Wazala. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and thank you all for being here this evening. I'm delighted to be back in this beautiful place, Shaikh Ibrahim Center, an example of a historical yet modern architecture. Thank you, Excellency, Sheikh Amai, for your hospitality and for your precious support. I would also like to welcome tonight the members of the Italian delegation to the 146th Assembly of the Interparliamentarian Union, held in Manama, members of Parliament Honorable Elia Quartapelle and Honorable Deborah Bergamini. It is a great pleasure and honor to have you amongst us here in Bahrain. To this regard, I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate the Bahraini authorities on the excellent organization of the IPU Assembly. Tonight we are celebrating the Italian Design Day 2023. The annual theme-based event launched in 2017 by the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, in collaboration and with the support of the Italian Ministry of Culture. This year's theme is the quality that enlightens, the energy of design for people and the environment. Federica Sala, an Italian curator and design advisor whose fields of activities range from design to art and architecture, will introduce us to the concept of a quality made in Italy, which goes beyond the mere conception of the design project, be it industrial or artisanal, and encompasses the quality of the ideas, the research, and the creativity of the designer. The Italian Design Day is an excellent opportunity to promote the Made in Italy all over the world, which always stands for combining the tireless pursuit of aesthetic beauty with technology and innovative functionality of the product, also considering its social and environmental impact. Al-Jawda, Allati Tunir, عنوان محاضرة الليلة والتي تلقيها السيدة فيدريكا سالا كبيرة التزمين والفن والعلوم الإيطالية والتي من خلالها سنتعرف على فكرة الجودة المصنوعة في إيطاليا. I leave the word to Federica and I wish you all a very pleasant evening. Grazie, shukran, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Federica.
So, first of all, thank you to all of you very much for being here tonight. I'm very happy to be in Bahrain. It's my first visit to this beautiful country. And in these 2 days, I could have seen many different art spaces and cultural hub and museums. And first of all, where we are now, the Shaikh Ibrahim Center, that is really brings that idea of restoring the past and the heritage and bringing it and transforming into a contemporary tool. And so I'm very happy, and it has been very interesting to be there. I take out this. So, okay. I also wanted to thank everyone that made possible for being here. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Italy, that with this Italian Design Day 6 years ago, because the 6th edition started building cultural bridges in the name of design in between different countries. and everyone involved behind in Italy and here from the Italian embassy here in Bahrain that made possible this exchange. I also wanted to thank ADI Design Museum and ADI Association for Industrial Design that made possible the organization behind the scene, and again all of you for being there. So, okay. As the ambassador said, it means the quality that enlightens. I think that is very important. We often listen speaking about the quality of production. Of course, is very, very important. The quality of production is important that it is well done, is important that it lasts in time. The quality of production, I think, must be in a way given for as assumed thing. But I think it's more important sometimes to focus on other things that are as important as what we intend as a first idea about the quality of the project. Quality today is a lot about the manufacture, but it is also very important the idea that is behind, and that's the most important and precious things, because when in a way we do not need design, we have a lot of things, we do not need more things, and on the other hand we need more design, because we need a design that put the head in the project and with an idea that is able to give another twist and another shape to the world we are living through now. Because of course, for example, the sustainability 10 years ago was not a subject in most part of the country, and now is something that you cannot consider when you make a design project. So sometimes it's very important for a designer just to be in condition to go in a company and to understand where they can intervene or what they can change in order. Maybe it's just a matter of material research, or you can study the production in order to reduce the waste. That's a design project, not necessarily just the chair at the very final end. Thinking how to slightly change the machine that produces design, industrial design, in order to reduce the weight. For example, even in very industrial project as like the glass of the Nutella by Ferrero that I think maybe a lot of you have tasted. They work a lot trying to reduce the amount of glass inside the glass itself, because this makes the little box less heavier, and so it's even more economic and they waste less material. So that's very important. But the idea is not just is even the idea that sometimes is something that is make it special, and the idea behind must not become something, let's say, just in a commercial way. But if we look now, and we will see a little overview over the years of what is now became some icons of Italian design, sometimes at that time they were very in advance to the times, because design has a very important role in bringing art. Design, what I always say, that design is a mindset, because design is a way you look at things and you dismantle them and you mount them back. At the same time, design is really different things. Design is I think is the answer, and design is a field that brings. Design means being a designer means to be a problem solver. That sometimes being a problem solver means that you enter a situation and you start posing the good question. And that's very important, because sometimes you always think about the answer and you never think about the question that are behind. And sometimes just posing a different question, you can change the answer, because you can change also how the audience look at things. So it's very important to questioning everything. And when you enter a situation, to start questioning how much material do you use to produce that, how long it takes, how much waste do you produce for that. But in addition, what made possible because when design arrived and started, it didn't even exist the name design. It didn't exist a school of design. It didn't. I mean, all those that today we call designers, they were all architects, and then they started to fight and to have their own association. And museum of design at the beginning was not considered something you should expose in a museum, but was totally different. A little bit as photography has been at the beginning. So because this idea of that is something that you can reproduce, slightly change the border in between what is art and what is not art. But finally, industrial design born in Italy because a bunch of pioneers in the field that at the base they were all artists, all architects. They wanted to bring art and mainly poetry inside daily life object. And I will come after also on that subject, but I really and strongly believe that what made special Italy, and in the fact that it has been like the country where industrial design is born, is the fact that you have this daily beauty and you use it. So here a little overview. We start for something from the past that is, in my opinion, the perfect example of what it means to bring poetry and art in the life. And one case above many others, excellent case we had in Italy, is the Olivetti case. That it has been, in a way, the apple of that years. So when they started, like on the left, you have the typewriter by Mario Bellini, and on the right, the Valentina from 1969 by Ettore Sozzas. So they started a new thing. It's the era where you started, it's kind of like the Apple Macintosh of that time, because they were starting having a typewriter that you could bring everywhere and writing. Even the advertising campaign of Valentina is very interesting because there is like teenagers on the grass playing and writing things. So it comes outside. It's not just something in the office, but it was the reflection of a different way of looking at things and people. Achille Castiglioni has been one of the great masters of Italian design. He taught a lot at Politecnico. And every time he was famous, he was a very funny man, but he was very famous because at the end of the exam, he was always posing questions like, who won the football cup this year, or who won Sanremo, that's the music festival we have in Italy. And sometimes the students were kind of like staring at him. And then he was always answering, you cannot be a designer if you're not curious. So you must know who won the football cup, you must know who won Sanremo and everything, because you have to design objects, and these objects are for people. And if you do not understand why people like one thing or why they do not like another thing, you cannot be a designer. So you have to be curious about everything. Design is the less snobbish discipline you can find, because you really have to look at everything. I always say that if today Achille Castiglioni was still alive, probably he would have been designing stick for selfie, a selfie stick, because it's something that it didn't exist, but now you see a lot of people using, and it changes our behavior in between even ourselves and the monuments that we look at, because we always now try to take a picture of ourselves and what is behind. So, ending with Olivetti, this was very important too, because Olivetti has been this Italian informatic company that's been very big all over the world, and Ettore Sozzas Jr., he worked with Olivetti as artistic director for many years, and he developed the Elea 9000 that has been the first Italian computer in 1951. So that was pretty much in advance from everything around. But what is interesting is the approach of the computer as it was art. If you look on the image with the green background, all the touches on the screen, they were composed as like a painting. And even in the area, the computer was taking 400 square meters, so it was huge because all the processor needed a lot of space. And he designed all the way of the cables to pass on top. And this practical, but at the same, this fact that it has to be functional, but being functional, you don't need to lose the beauty of it and the use of color, even in very technical things. It doesn't. Before there was this kind of dichotomy in between things that are functional and things that they are in a way appealing and they give you an emotion. And design put these two things together. So they bring an emotion into something that might be very technical or that has a precise function. As a chair needs to be, I mean, you use a chair to sit. But at the same time, it can give you feelings. The Vespa that I think all of you knows, because this, of course, this very iconic product of Italian design also insists on what I was saying before, that design is the result also, a result also of a way of living, and this Italian lifestyle where you enjoy every single moment. That means that to stay with the family and with the friends and to be around in the landscape is very important. And everything that has been invented in the industrial design, that also one of the reasons why in Italy, all over Italy, we have a lot of industrial museums where they show the culture of industry. And if you ever are in Italy and interested, you can you can go to the Piaggio Museum, that's very beautiful, or the Ferrari, or the Poltrona Fra. You really have a lot of company that created their own museum, and they're very interesting because they give you a window on the society of that all over the year, and it's something that you cannot find in many other countries, because they really, I mean, in Italy we really went next to the other in between the culture and the industry, and that's very important. Here, for example, these pieces, you cannot say when Castiglioni, Achille, Pier Giacomo, they made the mezzadro that sit for Zanotta. I don't think that they were, I mean, they never thought how many pieces I'm going to sell about that is going to be a bestseller. But by the hand, it became one of the most iconic furniture pieces ever that is collected in all the museums of the world. And it was just, it is a kind of like Marcel Duchamp application in design. So that's very important sometimes, especially for young designers, that they do not be afraid and thinking, it's kind of like you cannot know the story what will be at the end. You need to go through the story to get to the end. And that's Italian design. It's always been a little bit this, in a way, mad approach where you accept the fact that you might not know which is the end of the story. And this brought also this, for example, the Arco, that was the lamp that Achille Pier Giacomo Castiglione designed for Floss in '62, is still the bestseller of the company, and is so much a bestseller that in 2020 they gave to the lamp the Compasso d'Oro alla Carriera, the career most important international prize of design, Compasso d'Oro, because at that time didn't want the prize because people was thinking, bah, that's not going to be something very important, and then after 60 years it's still the bestseller. But the funny thing is that everyone used to put the lamp on the table, and Castiglioni designed it to put lights on the floor. The idea was that the light was going on the floor, because the good things about design, and then people appropriate themselves of design because they use it. So they are every single person or every single family that has one design piece, it's used in a different ways, and that's very interesting. Sorry, I probably, okay, that's another very interesting story. That's on the image on the right, that's the Memphis group that in the 80s has been one of the most important and unconventional group that put together many Michele De Lucchi, Nathalie de Pasquier, George Soden, Aldo Cibic, Matteo Thun, Ettore Sozzas Jr., Masanori Umeda, many different Shiro Kuramata people from all over the world. And it was disruptive. They were young, they presented in '84 in Corso Europa in Milan during Milano Design Week, and kind of like everyone hated it because it was so far away from what was the current style in design. And so then they became something very little and intellectual in a way for many years. And now, that is like 40 years after this unconventional and disruptive movement, Memphis became so transversal and famous that in 2020 and 21, Inter Football Club of Milan, they made T-shirt out of Memphis historical textile pattern. So, and it was interesting to see as something that became like, in a way, a disruptive thing in the 80s, 40 years after, entered the culture and the population at the point of being the official T-shirt of one of the two most important football team in Milan. That means that sometimes you need to give time to plants to grow and even to design to enter and become iconic, because now the poor young designer, many times they are asked, can you design me an iconic piece? And they are kind of like, you cannot decide. I mean, iconic do not means weird, do not means with a shape that you can immediately. Iconic means something that it became so famous that you recognize immediately. And with you, it means everyone, not just someone that really works in the field. That's a very little project that I love very much, because it shows how you can bring poetry even in the smallest and less seen and less maybe charming things of ever, like the manhole. It's a company from Brescia, Montini, and Giulio Iacchetti and Matteo Ragni, they designed it in 2016, the manhole to be on the street. And every time I bump into one of that in the street and I see the little part of the birds, I smile. Because, I mean, of course, you don't need a decorative things. I mean, you're walking on the street, I mean, you just need something not to bump into that. But by the end, with something plain where you don't have nothing, and you see these traces, like if a bird passed by. For me, I think this makes me pleasure. It gives me a feeling, an emotion, and a smile. And Italian design is also that, bringing a little bit of light attitude and poetry and giving a feeling of an attendant thing. And it keeps on going, because, like, for example, now other designer like Marcantonio Forcelletti is presenting this salone, this window that is unlighted, that gives the idea that there is an open window behind, but actually you can put on a wall. And that gives you an open onto other worlds. Or Odoardo Fioravanti with this magical shower that seems arriving from the ceiling without any mechanism. This is to show how you can bring magic and poetry in something also that is very technical, as a, let's say, bathroom equipment that's very technical, and maybe I don't think that you need a fake window, but in a way maybe there is a side of your heart that is more happy with a fake window, that brings you the light and the joy, and that maybe is simply funny, and being funny again makes you smile. That's one of the, sorry, two more. Wait. I went too fast. So that's another example. For example, even in tiles, that's a company from next to Modena, that's the district of ceramic tiles, Mutina. So they worked with Nathalie Dupasquier, the painter. She's French, but she lives in Italy since 40 years. And these are the tiles named Margherita. They went out with a couple of years ago. That you can, I mean, there are many different things, but you can really compose your floor and wall as is a painting. And that's incredible, because in a way, the company produced something to transform you into your own artist of your own house. So then you can decide. And that's a very important thing also that is in the idea behind design, the fact that you can, the design is not never something you stare at and you feel a distance with, but design brings you in the middle. Design brings you as an active, let's say, oblige you to have a direct action with the design furniture pieces or even with the tiles. It needs your advice, and if you need to interact, you need to think about it, and that's very important, because there is this dialogue in between the human being and the design pieces. Or even the joy, no? This is a very famous chair by Campeggi Design that is a little company that I appreciate very much, because they generally make like beds for extra beds for houses, and they invented over the years. It's the same subject, and every year they do something different that shows how imagination and creativity can be endless. And Foscarini with the lamp. So this idea of magical, that in a way this one is more, let's say, it's more used for kids maybe, or young adult, and the other is a lot of research. So it's very important, the research that is behind all the design pieces. And of course the quality then is so magic, then when you see that lamp you don't even understand how it's possible that that unlighted ball stays on top and is not fixed nowhere. And this is the magic that is the technical production behind. That's why always is very important in design. Generally you always speak about the designer, but it's never like that. Behind every designer, there is one entrepreneur of the company, and sometimes and very often the engineer that works in the production. So the designer arrives with an idea, and behind there is a whole team of people that say, no, so we can do that, or we can change, or we can adapt the machine, or we can invent the machine and everything. And there is the spirit of who run the company that, of course, needs maybe to put the money to do the research and to prepare the mold and everything. So it's always at least the result of 3 brain, and but often much more than 3. So it's very important, because sometimes you always on magazine or on things you always speak about designers, but there is a very, very big work behind. That's why Giulio Castelli, the founder of Cartel Company, he made this beautiful book with Paolo Antonelli from MoMA Museum in New York, named La Fabbrica delle Idee. That was the industry of ideas. That was an overview of all the design company. That is what I was anticipating before. Design needs to observe human behaviors and comes out with objects that shows the new way of living. Like, for example, since when we started having laptops or smartphone everywhere, changed also the way we use like living rooms, because now with all the digital platform of film on demand, in a way sofas started to become beds, because people do a lot of things. They work on the sofa, they eat on the sofa, and and it totally changed since like 50 years ago. Sofas, they were maybe more composed, now they are different. So that's a very important thing too. For example, 2 little things, one very new and one old. This is a very little studio in Milan, that Milan is full, that started when the COVID arrived. Then a lot of little bar and restaurant had the possibility of putting table outside on the sidewalk because of the COVID restriction. So in order to amplify the number of people. And this little studio in Milan, they invented this chair with an umbrella behind. That is very helpful when it rains, but also when there is too much sun. And it's a very, very simple and cheap thing. And now in the city you start seeing a lot of that. And that is a very little and clever idea. And at the same time, always Castiglioni, because he was a genius, when they invented Mezzadro, was 71. Because they invented that. Because people starting to be at the phone. At that time it was not the smartphone, of course, it was the phone on the wall. And he started actually for a need by his own family. So he was disappointed because his wife was staying too much time over the phone. But she had back pain. So he invented this so she could sit a little bit, but not too much. So she was comfortable, but not too comfortable that you stay there 2 hours. And Mezzadro born like that, as a tool for as an answer to the arrival of the phone in the Italian houses. So a place where you can sit a little bit, but not too much. And that's very important, because then people now buy it still a lot, and they just put it like a sculpture, like a little, again, Marcel Duchamp thing. But at the beginning, it has a purpose and a meaning. And this, so on the right there is Palomba Serafini Zucchetti for Zucchetti Cost. That's this with the water candy that won a lot of prize too, because it totally changes the ritual of when you have a shower. Because this new water, I don't know how to say water, you wash yourself with this thing in your hand. So it's kind of like you have your soap in your hand, but you have directly the water. So this is something that totally changed it in a way. But one of the most interesting things is a very new project by Francesco Faccini. It's named Allodola. It's actually a kind of like is a home helper for keeping your smartphone up. So it has a magnet on top, and you can stick your smartphone, and maybe you are cooking and you are looking to Giallo Zafferano or to another magazine of recipe, and you need to look at it. Or you are a tutorial how to make up or how to play music or whatever, and you never know where to pose your phone. And with these things, you can turn it up and down and move it up and down. So you can put a fake candlelight if you want, but at the same time, it's a tool for something that 10 years ago we never had with us, and now never leave us, because he's always next to us. Always, always, always. And we do a lot of things there. We work, we chat, we have video, and after the pandemic, even more and more. So he invented a tool for us in the house to use it, and I think it's very helpful. That's a very interesting thing. That design is also a way, that's also the reason why we are here and I am here. Design is a way to connect culture. And sometimes it's very important to remember to ourselves how it's important not to be afraid of doing things, and not to wait that other people comes and assign you something, but go and let's say fight for your ideas. This very young designer named Matteo Guarnaccia is from Catania. He left Italy when he was 16. He went to study in the US. He never went back in Italy. He have moved many different countries. And then he presented this project he has been working on 2 years, CCC, Cross-Cultural Chair, that was all, he called a lot of big companies to ask money to produce a project. And of course, everyone said no, because he was kind of like a student calling like this. So he made a crowdfunding, and he arrived to produce a project. So he had been traveling all in between Brazil, Mexico, Japan, Indonesia, China, India, Russia, Nigeria, country chosen because they are like the population is much bigger than the other. And he studied the different way of seating people. Like in India, they sit and they pose one leg on, maybe on the left, or you don't have the legs in Japan, you sit on the floor. So he studied and he produced in every place. He worked with a local design and with a local curator and a local writer and a local photographer, and he produced this beautiful book and exhibition. And then he went around many different museums all over the world, showing as design is a tool to create connection in between different cultures. And that's a very important thing. Of course, sustainability is something that today we cannot even conceive, not consider, even if not everyone have this approach. But sustainability is not because we have should be not because we have rules, is because we ourselves, we strongly believe that for our better living and the better living of the planet, we need to integrate. It must be something that becomes natural. You don't even think that you have to be sustainable because you are at the beginning. That's a very interesting project that shows how design is not just furniture, but is a mindset that you can apply to everything. So Francesco Faccin, he produced it for Eco Natura Sì, that's a chain of bio supermarket. This project named Nudo, that means in a way naked, because to fight with all the I don't know what happened. To fight, but anyway, I will explain, but I don't know what to do. Press the button. Which button, anyway? I think I need help. Anyway, this project was to fight the packaging, the waste of packaging. If you go in many supermarket to buy fruit, if you don't go to the like street market in Italy, but you go to the supermarket, you have a lot of fruit and vegetables that are sold in like plastic boxes with plastic on top. And this project is conceived to, of course, maybe you take more time because it's not everything ready to go and paid, but it's all composed. No, I don't know. It works. It's composed in order to have the possibility for you to take. Okay, so it's composed to be a modular. You can bring everywhere, and you put legumes and fruit and inside, and you have no packaging ever. So that's very important because the reduction of the waste of plastic, but even like paper packaging. So you go with your textile bag or you buy it there, you always bring the same, and in a way it is a proposal that for big cities like, for example, could be Milan, brings back a very old attitude, because it's something that, like say, my grandmother, she was going to the market like that, but then it's something that in big city we totally lost. So sometimes design is also looking back. This is a very important project by another interesting young story, Alessandro Stabile. He was almost just out from the school, and he presented this chair one-to-one that is made, that is now is produced by Martinelli Venezia, but at the beginning he produced himself. That is important because it is 100% made of recycled plastic. And that's very important because sometimes now we have these, we try never to go into plastics because of course it's not sustainable. But I think it's more important for us to understand that some plastic actually are more sustainable than wood, and I mean, I don't think it is such a sustainable thing to do everything in wood because plastic is not sustainable, because if everyone goes wood, in 10 years we will not have a tree, not everywhere. Sometimes if the plastic, so I think, personally, I think that we need to fight the daily use of things that you take and you throw away. But for example, that chair that is all made in recyclable plastic comes in this very flat packaging where the legs and the back, they are dismantled. So it even saves a lot of money in transport and in stocking and everything, because it's very light. You just receive this and you mount as a little toy for kids. Your own plastic chair, and it's very durable and it lasts very time, and this shows how you can always invent, even if exists many chairs, you can always invent something new. And this, we are almost at the end, but this is another interesting story. In that lady that you see there, Alice Matta, she's a very artistic person. She's the daughter of Sebastian Matta, and the sister of Gordon Matta Clark. So his father was a very famous painter from Chile, and his brother was a very famous photographer. She's born in Italy and raised in Italy, and she was a designer. And some years ago, like 3 years ago, she decided to quit the creative world, and she became the president of a pharmaceutical society. That's very interesting, because that's, you say, okay, that's a big change in life. And SPA, Società Prodotti Antibiotici, it has been founded in Milan, in Barona area. That's, let's say, not in the city center, but just a little bit outside the city center. And Società Prodotti Antibiotici, it has been the first Italian pharmaceutical company allowed to produce penicillin directly by Fleming, just after the invention. And when she entered the company, the first thing that she has done is to call a collective group of street artists to paint all the facade of the building. That's a very unconventional approach, because generally they imagine you have of all the pharmaceutical societies very clean, very white, very futuristic. And at the contrary, she brought art and design inside. So she went inside, she asked all the employees what they wanted. So one chose the Padova chair, and the other one Driade, and the other whatever. And she brought all the collection of the art of her family, that is a huge, like Leonor Fini, I mean, very important. And everyone could choose from her personal connection. So inside is all full of plants now, and very good Italian furniture, and beautiful and important painting from all over the world. And outside is as this street effect that, I mean, you really don't look, for you it's very difficult to think that you're entering a pharmaceutical society. And this, and what she has done also is she bought this font named Bianco Nero, that is a font that is kind of like as a brevet. You can read it even if you have dyslexic or you have dyscalculic. I mean, you are not able to read the numbers or the letters. And so she changed all the graphism inside the medicine with this font. So this means, when I think, I say that we need more design, sometimes we need less design, but we need more ideas in design, is this kind of approach. Because that lady with her art and design approach arrived to totally change even a pharmaceutical company, building something that is totally different. And this different view, I think, is one of the most precious things we have in Italy. I will end with the last slide that is about this foundation, Italia Patria della Bellezza, so Italy Land of Beauty Club. That is a foundation that gives every year some prizes, some award in money or in kind, or they help those that wonder why with the communication and everything. What they do is they insist on the final part, so they just put money to work on the communication strategy and press and PR, so the very, very final things, because they start from the point of view that in Italy we have a lot of very important things, and sometimes there are so many that it's difficult for them to merge. And they just help things in the very final things, not from the very beginning. And and what is interesting is that, for example, it exists since 3 years, this award, and this next Architecture Biennale in Venice, in the Italian pavilion curated by Forestbury Architecture, there are 2 of the projects that won the past edition, that are young group of collective of architects, one from Calabria and the other one from Puglia, that won the past edition because they had a very creative and innovative idea of how to use architecture as a tool for building communities, and they will be in the Venice Italian pavilion. That's important. And I wanted to end with something that if you work in the design field in Italy, you have probably heard many times, that a phrase by Ettore Sozzas Jr., that was born in Innsbruck and died in Milan in 2007, that is, se qualcosa ci salverà sarà la bellezza. If someone is going to save us, this will be the beauty. And I think this is something that we have very present in Italy, in everything, and especially in industry and in the industry of design. There is this passion, and people are proud to something that is functional and that is beautiful and add something, an emotion to your daily life. So that's, I think, is the most important message of our Italian design. And that's it. Thank you very much for coming. And then if you have any question, I will be there and happy to answer you. Or I don't know if, I think that the Pastor, you want to close and say something? Ah, no, sorry.
Well, thank you so much. I have to say that I admire Italy's contribution to the art and design scene. I told the ambassador that. I have two questions for you this evening. First one is the fact, you talked about design, sustainability. You also talked about chasing the concept. One of the examples, the Italian artist you mentioned. First question is, I've seen now that we lost the differentiation in design. Facade buildings are becoming very similar in different parts of the world. I can't differentiate between cars. When I was young, I can tell that's an Italian car, that's a German car, that's a Japanese car. Now I can't tell the difference. I have to come very, very close. I don't want to be sexist, but even women now, they're all the same. I mean, they do a lot of plastic surgery. They become exactly the same. So that's the first aspect I want you to try to address, maybe. And then how design is going to impact our life, because it's art. As the economics at the center of gravity moves all the way from Europe, the center of art historically, to India and China, to Asia. Because now we've seen the gravity is moving toward Asia in terms of economics, demand, and leading the world. So how is that going to, the consumer behavior in those culture will eventually come back to us. Maybe not to us, but to our children. So how is that going to impact the taste and the design?
It's a very difficult question, but I think that in a way, I think that what is important now is to understand that it's not a matter of teaching a taste to someone else. I think I do not agree with that. I think that this idea that you do something that has to teach taste to someone, another country, is not a good direction to be taken. I believe in dialogues. So I really think that when you adapt things into the local market and local use, it's more important because you create a relation. So I think that in a way, of course, I think all the world have been living into this. I mean, we live in the globalization, so everything is, as you say, the facade, they are all. It's true also about the car, but even like, for example, in colors. If you look at the pictures of the video from Rai Italian television of the 50s and the 60s, you had all the car of different colors. But now you don't. I mean, that's the color of the car is reduced even in Italy because. Then maybe you resell it. You don't. I mean, once you were buying your car and you were keeping your car for 40 years, and now you keep it in leasing 3 years, and then you resell, and it's easier to resell a black car or a white car than a pink one. So there is the market behind changed the way of using things. Is a good thing? Is a bad thing? It depends. I think that also, for example, if you see in big cities, because then it depends where you live. For example, in Milan, a lot of people from young generation, they don't even have the license to drive a car. In their mind, the car is not anymore something interesting because, or if they have the license, it's changed their idea of the private property of having a car because you have car sharing, you have sharing bikes, you have sharing trottinetta. But anyway, you have different ways. You have public transport, and it was different. Even in my generation, I'm from Milan. When it was impossible not to have a car. Everyone were moving in the car. So things change. People that are now in their 20s in Milan, they really no one has a car, and they don't even need it. When they have to go outside, they rent a car. So in some way, you have different behaviors that arise, and that's important that design follow. But you can still, that's not an Italian example. But like one of the most interesting things I think that, for example, Citroën made a very beautiful car, Ami, it's the name, friend. That's a little electric car that is perfect for the city. So that's an example, and I'm sure that many other in Italy will follow. That is is an object that there is my neighbor that has one. Every time I go down and I see that, I want to buy that car, because it's so beautiful and nice, and these things is important too, because design is something you can, instead of having that everyone wants because of homologation, can be something that everyone wants because it's a good idea and it brings it's add a value. So I think this is the difference, to avoid homologation, but to open the door to the spread of new behavior that can help us also to be more sustainable. Because like in big cities like Milan, if you don't use a car, it's even better for the health, because sometimes the pollution is too high. And concerning to China or other country, of course, it's difficult to understand the market, but sometimes, for example, many times during these past 2 years, when I was meeting people that run design editing company, they were kind of like, who knows if this Milano Design Week people will arrive, buyers from China will arrive. But if you stop and ask them, but who are you waiting for? Which are the names of the people that should arrive? Most part of them do not even know the names of these phantomatic Chinese architects. Of course they exist. But the thing is that sometimes we should maybe pose the good question and go to, before thinking how to sell something to someone else, probably it's more important to go there and meet that person and understand what he or she needs. So I think that's more important, that selling by the idea of selling.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I had a very maybe selfish question. I'm a Bahraini, and one of the things I was hoping that you'll mention is something I read about the reasons behind creative design by Italians and the leadership that Italians have in design. I've read, and I'm not sure if this is true or not, but at some point in history, Italian design and the excellence of Italian design was propelled by sometimes the lack of natural resources in Italy compared to what's around it. And I thought that was a very similar example to what we have in Bahrain, a small country with limited natural resources, surrounded by many rich countries in natural resources, and how in some cases Bahrainis try to overcome that by being better in design and creativity, and I thought that would be something maybe similar, and I thought that would be a focus on your presentation. Is that a true theory, by the way, that lack of resources leads to better design?
Yes, compared to other countries, yes. Because, for example, we don't have a lot of gas or petrol, so compared, of course, to, for example, even Bahrain, our, let's say, natural resources are very little. We have, of course, we have a lot of industry that produce compared even to other countries, like, for example, UK, where you have less industry. Italy, you still have got a lot of industry. Then there is the tourism, of course. what you say is right. I think, I mean, design, it has been, I think that, for example, I found, I mean, I'm here since 2 days, but I found some things in common in between here and Milan, and Italy in general, that is in how design is a tool to create a contemporary places and a contemporary lectures. For example, in Italy now you have a lot, and because the risk at a certain point, I don't remember the name of this American writer, historian that wrote that book that was kind of like, say, a little bit apocalyptic book, but interesting, where they were saying that the risk of Italy and Europe in general was to come a kind of like a Disney World for tourism. And that was a risk in a way, but now I think that in Italy in the past 20 years has been done so many good things all over Italy to create not just contemporary art museum, but to bring new lecture. Like, for example, in Brescia just opened the new restoration of the archaeological museum with the Vittoria Lata. It's something that is so beautiful, and it really is important, as it has been. I mean, in Italy, art and architecture has been very important in building, which are the monuments that we go to see. We always went to see, but the fact that we keep on working on architecture and design, and even graphism for Signalétic to go there, it's very important, because it keeps things in the present and brings things in the future. And like today, even the fact of being here and all the area around here, or the Shaikh Ibrahim Center, it has been for me a great discovery, because the House of Journalism, the House of Textile, and the House of Architecture, they're already the perfect example of how contemporary applied arts can be a tool to relate. Even like, for example, this morning I was with a very good guide. I was in the souk, and we bumped into this very beautiful, I don't remember the name, Bahrain design shop, or made in Bahrain. Yes, thank you very much. So we bumped into this beautiful place, and I wanted to buy everything, because but they were really, it was really in between design and craft, but very local things you can find just here. And that's a good example of what is a design approach linked with craft heritage and local production. Is objects that you can, I mean, that you cannot find in let's say IKEA, that has the same things all over the world, no matter that, of course, it's very good for many other things, because it's super democratic and things, but they are very local, but at the same time, it's something that you can really use even in your house, even if you live on the other side of the world. And that's very important. I don't know if I answered you. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming.